Well, hey everybody, and welcome to pro basketball from the mid-1980s to the 1990s. We'll explore some of the greatest players of all time during this presentation, and you'll see that this is kind of seen as the golden age of the NBA, and for good reason. There were so many great players, so many great um, storylines during this time, and so let's look at it. Let's start off with John Stockton. Of course, around here, John Stockton is loved, and he is an absolute legend in NBA history. He played his entire career for the Utah Jazz, 20 years for the Jazz, and you know he is in a lot of ways the ultimate underdog story. He grew up in Spokane, Washington, went to Gonzaga University, which is in Spokane. He was the he was not highly touted going um, into Gonzaga. In fact, he went to a high school in Spokane called Gonzaga Prep High School, and he didn't think that he would probably even play college ball when high school started for him. He was undersized, and he was only like 5'5" or 5'6" as a freshman. He grew, up to 6'1", where he topped out, but he was not highly recruited out of high school. Gonzaga University gave him a scholarship eventually, and he made a name for himself at Gonzaga. Still, though, he was not considered, this going to be this great pro, and he proved everybody wrong. He was the 16th overall pick in the 1984 draft by the Jazz, but at 6'1" and 175, he was, kind of a small guy by NBA standards. He made up for that with his just unbelievable sense of the game. His his knack for um, just outwitting and outsmarting his opponents, working harder. He was just he had all the intangibles that you'd look for in a player, and he had to have those because on sheer ability alone, he would not have made it, most likely. But he not only made it, but became a Hall of Famer because of all those intangible qualities that he possessed. You can see a 10-time All-Star. He was a two-time first team and six-time second team and three-time third team All NBA. So 11 All NBA teams, five-time a defensive second team, and a lot of great point guards during that era that he played. Magic Johnson, Isaiah Thomas, and others. And so these guys were always just kind of trading off first, second, third teams, in All NBA and All defensive teams. But Stockton led the league 9 times in assists and twice in steals. What you will see, though, is that if you go to his career stats, 13.1 points per game. So he could score. He was a reliable scorer. He was an excellent shooter. Didn't take tons of shots, but he made a lot of the shots he took. But you can see his assists. 15,806 is first all time, and 3,265 steals is first all time. So he is first all time in NBA history in 2 out of the 5 main statistical categories in the NBA. That's incredible. And so, he just was he was Mr. Dependable. He was almost never hurt. He played well. He was reliable. You just knew what you were going to get with John Stockton. And so, if you can't tell, he is definitely one of my favorites. And I just think he was so clutch, and he was just so witty and just such a smart player, uh, and such a hard worker that he just excelled when, if you just looked at him walking down the street, you wouldn't guess that he's one of the all-time great players in NBA history. Of course, he was on the Dream Team in 1992, and he was also in the 1996 Olympics as well, and won gold medals in both Olympics. And he holds the NBA record for most games with one team, 1,504 games, all with the Jazz. So his career, of course, was topped off by induction to the Hall of Fame in 2009, and that is John Stockton. Michael Jordan is perhaps the greatest basketball player ever. He certainly is probably the most famous basketball player ever. If you didn't grow up in the 80s, you don't quite understand his fame. Michael Jordan transcended basketball. He was the biggest sports star in the world for quite a while. Nike modeled a whole campaign around him, just his shoes, and because he was such an amazing basketball player, it gave credence to Nike's campaign, their advertising campaign, and so everything else Nike took off, really because of Michael Jordan. And Bo Jackson was also, of course, a Nike campaign guy as well. So those two athletes, but Jackson was much more short lived. Michael Jordan is Mr. Nike, no doubt about it, and he took Nike to being, uh, the number one sporting apparel line in the world, right? So Jordan became a legend at North Carolina. He left after his junior year. He had helped North Carolina win a national title as a freshman, hitting the game-winning shot. And he was picked third overall in the 1984 draft. Uh, Hakeem Olajuwon was picked first by the Houston Rockets, and a guy named Sam Bowie was um, picked second by the Portland Trail Blazers. They passed on Jordan because Portland already had a guy at the shooting guard position named Clyde Drexler, who became a Hall of Famer. So Portland thought they were set there, and so they picked Bowie, who was a really good player out of the University of Kentucky, and Michael Jordan fell to number 3 to the Chicago Bulls. And so that is one of the great blunders of all time, right, by the Trailblazers for not taking Jordan. Uh, at 6'6", and a wiry 216. Jordan could jump out of the gym. He had great elevation. He of course improved his jump shot as his career went along, but he was always a good shot. And he had just so many moves around the hoop, moves to get open. He could soar above guys. He could go around them. He was just incredible. Nicknamed MJ, Air Jordan, in his airness, Jordan won 6 titles with the Bulls. 2 three-peats, 91 to 93 and 96 to 98. In all 6 of those NBA finals, he was the MVP. He was 5-time league MVP during the season, and 14 All-Star appearances, 3 All-Star game MVPs. He was 10-time first team and 1-time second team All-NBA, and 9-time defensive first team in the NBA. He was the ultimate competitor. He was the total package on the basketball court. He could score at will. He was the guy. He was clutch. He was big time, and he was a great defensive player. In fact, he was the NBA Defensive Player of the Year in 1988 for the whole league. He won the Rookie of the Year in '85, and so I mean he got right out of the gates started, and everybody knew he was going to be a star. 10-time scoring champ. 10 times he led the league in scoring, led the league in steals 3 times. He was twice the slam dunk contest champ, and he really kind of elevated the slam dunk competition to being a must-watch thing. But like I said, his stardom transcended just basketball. He was 3-time Associated Press Athlete of the Year for all sports. Of course, his number 23 jersey is retired, and he's considered still to this day by many people to be the greatest player ever. His career points, over 32,000 career points in total, and his 30.12 points per game are first all time. You can see also averaged 6.2 rebounds a game, 5.3 assists. He could find the open man. He preferred to shoot the ball, but he could find the open guy, and sometimes he did to help his team win games. And he's still third all time in steals, if you can believe that. So like I said, he was a tremendous defensive player as well as being one of the great offensive players of all time. Jordan won gold medals as a collegiate in the 1984 Olympics and in the 1992 Olympics on the Dream Team. He retired after his 3rd championship in 1993 and played in the Chicago White Sox organization, trying his hand at professional baseball for a couple of seasons. And while he was a decent player, he was nowhere near on the baseball field what he was on the basketball court. He didn't have there was no parallel to Michael Jordan when it came to basketball. He led the Bulls to a 72-10 record during the 95-96 season, which was the most all time, best record all time until the Warriors broke it in the mid 2010s. And he still has the highest career playoff scoring average in NBA history with 33.45 points a game. So he played better in the biggest games than he did in, in just regular games. He was clutch, he rose to the occasion, and there's only one Michael Jordan. Here are some pictures of Jordan. And of course, he was a high flyer, and his dunks were second to none. But he was just the ultimate competitor. He would just compete his brains out for anything, whether it was ping pong, golf, a game of cards, or on the basketball floor. He was the ultimate competitor. The mailman is KARL Malone. Played almost his whole career for the Utah Jazz. And right at the end, all us Jazz fans hated to see it, but he went to the Lakers for a year, tried to win a title, didn't do it. But Malone was Mr. Dependable at the power forward position. 13th overall pick in the 85 draft by the Jazz. 6'9" and a chiseled 259 pounds. He looked like a Greek god statue. The guy was huge, but he and Stockton teamed up to be the most devastating 1-2 combination uh, as far as point guard to an assist man to scorer, perhaps in NBA history. Uh, Nicknamed the mailman because he delivered. All right, twice the NBA MVP, 14-time All-Star. He was an 11-time first team power forward, 2 times second team, and 1 time third team. So 14 all NBA selections. He was also a 3-time defensive first team and 1 time defensive second team. He was an all-around player. Okay, you can see he is second all time in career points in NBA history, next only to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar at 36,928 points total. You can see he has almost 15,000 rebounds in his career and over 5,000 assists. He also attempted an NBA record for most free throws at 13,188, and he made an NBA record 9,787. He got fouled a ton. He was at the line a ton, and he made sure he was a good free throw shooter. But he was Mr. Reliable as far as you knew what you were going to get. Just like you knew from Stockton what you were going to get, you knew from Malone what you were going to get. You were going to get 25 points and 10 boards a night, and he was going to be tough, and he was going to dominate down low. So, of course, his number 32 jersey is retired. He is the Jazz all-time leading scorer, and I imagine he'll stay that way for a long, long time. He was inducted to the Hall of Fame in 2010 to cap off his career, and of course, there is only one mailman. Patrick Ewing was one of the great centers in NBA history. He played most of his career for the Knicks, played for the Supersonics and the Orlando Magic right at the end of his career, but for the Knicks is where he became a legend. He was the most sought-after recruit uh, in high school when he finished his high school career. And Georgetown was lucky enough to win the sweepstakes for the Patrick Ewing, for him to play at their school. He was then, after he dominated at Georgetown, he was the first overall pick in the 85 draft by the New York Knicks. He was 7 feet tall. He was tough. He had a good outside shot. He was a beast down low. He was just great. He was born and raised in Jamaica until he was 12. That's when he came to the U.S. And you can't teach size, and it's hard to teach just natural athleticism. And he had those things. He was an 11-time All-Star. He was a 7-time All NBA selection, 3-time All Defensive selection. You can see he was the Rookie of the Year in '86. His career stats: over 24,000 points, 21 points a game, almost 10 rebounds a game, and 2.4 blocks per game. He's one of the great shot blockers in NBA history. He was also on the gold medal team in the Olympics with Michael Jordan in 1984. and that was college players back then, but that team was loaded with talent. And so he was on that '84 Olympic team, and he was on the Dream Team in 1992. Patrick Ewing is a New York Knicks legend for sure. Dennis Rodman is one of the greatest rebounders in NBA history. The guy had a motor that just never quit. He's also one of the most enigmatic and interesting characters in NBA history, but really an interesting story when you get inside Dennis Rodman's head and understand kind of where he came from and what his background was. Uh, he was drafted. Well, let's first of all, he played from 1986 to 2000 for the Detroit Pistons, the Spurs, the Bulls, and then the Lakers and the Mavericks right at the end of his career. He had played collegiately at Little Cook County College in Texas in 1983, and then at Southeastern Oklahoma State, uh, which was a small school as well. Basically, Rodman grew up really poor. His home life was really tough. He even says his mom, while he knew his mom was a good lady and loved him. She never said so. She never said she loved him type thing. She was just a tough lady. She had a rough life herself, and Rodman just grew up in kind of a hard situation. Well, he loved basketball, but he wasn't real tall as far as he would become. He grew to be 6'7". He was like 6 feet tall, okay, out of high school, and then he grew like 7 inches in college, which who does that, right? And so therefore, out of southeastern Oklahoma State, he was a really good player, but being a small little school, didn't get a lot of recognition. So the Detroit Pistons were savvy enough to pick him in the second round, okay, the 27th pick, and in 1986 draft, and that was a steal of a deal. Okay, second round pick. There's not a whole lot expected from him, but he came into a very veteran team with the Detroit Pistons, and he fit right in. He was just this young, nice kid who did what he was told, but yet he played with reckless abandon. He played like he did not want to go back to his former life. Nicknamed the Worm because he was one of the great defenders and rebounders. He could worm his way into position to get that rebound, or he was always in the right position on defense. Like I said, his motor was just unstoppable. It never ran out. He was going 100 miles an hour the whole game. So much energy on the floor. Um, as he helped the Pistons to back-to-back titles in '89 and '90, and eventually Detroit lost their coach. That veteran team, guys started to retire. Guys started to, guys went to other places, and Dennis Rodman kind of lost his way a little bit, unfortunately. He started dyeing his hair, and he got all the piercings and tattoos, and he just kind of went off the deep end. But his game was and remained amazing. He went to the Spurs and helped them, have some good teams, and then he went to the Bulls and helped them win those three championships from '96 to '98. He was a two-time Defensive Player of the Year for the league, back-to-back seasons, and he was a seven-time All-Defensive First Team and a second teamer in '94. So an eight-time All-Defensive player. He just was unbelievable. He led the league in rebounding 7 times, 7 straight years, which is an NBA record. And you can see his career stats there with almost 12,000 rebounds. He averaged 13.1 rebounds per game. But he was just amazing. He'd dive for loose balls, dive on the hardwood floor. He'd dive into the stands. He just wanted to make people happy. Wanted the fans to go crazy, and he just wanted to win. And he was so fun to watch. You marveled at a guy that's 6'7" against the guys that were 6'10", 6'11", 7 feet, and he'd jump over him. His timing was impeccable. He just anticipated where the ball was going to come off the backboard or off the rim, and he was just always in the right place. He was amazing, amazing to watch. Reggie Miller is one of the great shooters in NBA history. He played for the Indiana Pacers his entire career. Out of UCLA, where he was a star. He was the 11th overall pick in the '87 draft. Uh, Shooting guard at 6'7", but a thin, wiry 195. You can see he was a 5-time All-Star, a 3-time third-team All-NBA selection, which is amazing. It shows you how great the the shooting guard position was during his era, because in most eras he'd be a first team, at least a second team All NBA a bunch of times, and he was a 3-time third team player, but he was tremendous. Okay, you can see his career stats: over 25,000 points. Um, he's second all time in career 3-pointers. Okay, at 2,560. You can see he's eighth all time in minutes played. Reggie Miller would just go. He'd play out of a 48-minute game. He'd play 44, 45, sometimes all 48 minutes. And all he did was run the entire game. He'd just run on. When his team was on offense, he would come off screens. He'd run from one side of the court to the other, trying to get open. And he'd come around screens, and he got the ball, and he rose up and he shot it. Uh, he was also a great free throw shooter. 5 times he led the league in free throw percentage, and he was clutch. Okay, he's the Pacers' all-time leading scorer. Of course, his number 31 jersey is retired. He was on the 1996 Olympic team that won the gold medal in Atlanta, and he's just a legend for the Indiana Pacers. Scottie Pippen. For the Chicago Bulls, Houston Rockets, and Portland Trailblazers, Scottie Pippen played at Central Arkansas. And, you know, he was not extremely heralded out of college. And he played a lot of point guard, actually. And um, the Chicago Bulls were really smart, and they had done their homework and their scouting of him. And they drafted him 5th overall in 1987. In fact, they moved up to get him, fearing that some other team might take him. And I don't know if another team would have taken him that high, because the Bulls had scouted him thoroughly, but other teams just weren't quite as high on him. And Pippen developed into one of the great players in NBA history. He was a small forward, but he was 6'8". And of course, as he went along in his career, he bulked up a little bit as well, um, to become a wiry, muscular guy. And he was the guy that Michael Jordan needed as a complementary player to win championships. He was on those 6 title teams with Jordan and the Bulls, and he was a defensive specialist. He was a rebounding specialist, and he could score. He developed into a good shooter, but around the hoop he was crafty, and he was just a great player. You can see 7-time All-Star, 3-time first team, 2-time second team, and 2-time third team All NBA player. So 7 All NBA selections, and a 8-time All Defensive first team and 2-time All Defensive second team. So 10 All Defensive selections. Led the league in steals in 1995. You can see his career stats there at 16 points a game, and over 5 assists a game, 2 steals a game. He was one of the best all-around players in basketball. He always played second fiddle to Michael Jordan, though, and I think that was hard for him at times. But then again, the pressure wasn't on him like it was on Jordan. So I guess that's an advantage. But his number 33 jersey is retired by the Bulls. And he was on 2 gold medal teams in the Olympics, the Dream Team in '92 and the 1996 team as well. He's the only person to win an NBA title and Olympic gold medals in the same year twice, both 1992 and 1996. Those are good years. Huh? So Scottie Pippen, great player, and he was the guy that Jordan really needed to take the Bulls over the top and to the next level to help them win championships. The Admiral, as he was called, David Robinson. What a great athletic player. What just a tremendous guy David Robinson is. Played his entire career for the San Antonio Spurs. He was the first overall pick in the 1987 NBA draft out of Navy. That's why he's called the Admiral. Um, he was actually he graduated from the Naval Academy in 1987, and he had to serve 2 years in the Navy before the Spurs could have him play for them, but they still were willing to do that to take him #1 overall, just to secure his rights. That's how much they wanted him, and that's how great they knew he would become. He was 7'1", 235 pounds, chiseled muscle, very athletic, and he helped the Spurs win 2 titles in 1999 and 2003. He was the league MVP in 1995, a 10-time All-Star, and a 10-time All-NBA selection, 4 first teams, 2 second teams, and 4 third teams. He was the Defensive Player of the Year in 1992 and an 8-time All-Defensive selection, 4 first teams and 4 second teams. He was the Rookie of the Year in 1990. He was the scoring champ in 1994, the blocks leader in 92, and the rebounding leader in 91. He could do everything on a basketball court. He was a tremendous player. His number 50 jersey is retired by the Spurs. You can see his career points, over 20,000 of them, 21.1 points per game, over 10,000 rebounds, 10.6 a game, and 3 blocks per game. So points, rebounds, and blocks, he was consistent. You knew what you were going to get, and he was just a great performer. He won gold medals in both the 92 and 96 Olympics, and once he scored 71 points in a game. That was in 1994. So David Robinson set the standard, right? For the he was really, the Spurs had George Gervin, who had won 4 scoring titles, but they hadn't sniffed any championships. David Robinson was the guy that they wanted to build around, and they did. And then, of course, once they got Tim Duncan, that's when they started winning titles, and the Spurs have won a bunch of them. Gary Payton's nickname was the Glove because he was such a great defensive player. Payton gets overlooked, I think, at times, at how great he was. Played most of his career for the Seattle Supersonics, played for the Milwaukee Bucks, the Lakers, the Celtics, and the Miami Heat as well. He was a star at Oregon State. He was the number 2 overall pick in the 1990 draft. A wiry 6'4" point guard. He did win 1 championship right at the end of his career with the Miami Heat, so that was a good way to kind of cap off his career. But he had some great years with the Supersonics that he led some great teams that the Sonics had. He was a 9-time All-Star. And you got to keep in mind how competitive point guard was during his career. John Stockton, Magic Johnson, right at the end of Johnson's career. You had some great point guards. Of course, Steve Nash would come onto the scene, and Jason Kidd, and guys like that. So Payton was a 2-time first team, 5-time second team, and 2-time third team All-NBA selection. So a 9-time overall All-NBA selection. He was the Defensive Player of the Year, the only point guard to win the Defensive Player of the Year award for the entire NBA, and he did that in 1996. The year he helped the Sonics get to the NBA Finals and against the Bulls. Now, unfortunately for the Sonics, they didn't win that series, but they put up a pretty good fight against the Bulls. It was a really good series. He was a 9-time All-Defensive first team. One of the great defensive players we've seen. And that's why he's called the Glove. Great at stealing the ball, anticipating, jumping into passing lanes. He was just awesome. He led the league in steals in 1996. You can see his career stats. Over 20,000 points, almost 9,000 assists, and he averaged almost 2 steals a game. Inducted to the Hall of Fame in 2013. He won gold medals in 1996 and in 2000 in the Olympics. And Gary Payton was just awesome. He was just awesome. Shaquille O'Neal. Few human beings have been as large as Shaquille O'Neal. This guy is just a mammoth of a guy. You can see he played for basically 20 years. Started out for the Orlando Magic as being the first overall pick in the 1992 draft out of LSU. Played for the Lakers as well, the Heat, the Suns, the Cavaliers, and the Celtics. He's been a star at LSU, grown into his body, and he was just a dunk master, a block. He just blocked shots out of nowhere, and he was a rebounding phenom. And so the Diesel, as he was nicknamed, and that name fits because he's about as big as a Diesel. Like I said, he was the first overall pick in that 92 draft by the Orlando Magic. He goes on to win 4 titles in his career, a three-peat in 2000, 2001, and 2002 with the Lakers, and then in 2006 with the Miami Heat. From 2000 to 2002, all three of those championships with the Lakers, he was the finals MVP. He was also the league MVP in 2000. 15-time All-Star, you can see, 3-time All-Star Game MVP. He was 8-time first-team center, 2-time All-NBA second-team center, and a 4-time All-NBA third-team center. So in his illustrious career, he had 14 All-NBA selections. He was the Rookie of the Year in 1993, twice led the league in scoring. His career stats, almost 24 points and 11 rebounds a game, as well as 2.3 blocks per game. Shaq dominated. He just was amazing to watch him. I mean, he was a bull in a china shop, and he was so much bigger and stronger than most people. He'd back guys down and they'd go flying, and sometimes he'd get a foul called on him, and he'd look around and say, "Wait a minute here, all I did was back the guy down. It's not my fault that I'm stronger than he is, And Shaq he could dominate a game when he wanted to. He also had tremendously quick feet, and for a guy that was 7'1" and 325 pounds, to be as nimble and as athletic as he was astonishing. He was on the 1996 Olympic team that won the gold medal in Atlanta. His number 34 jersey has been retired by the Lakers, and he's one of only 3 players to win an NBA MVP, an All-Star Game MVP, and a Finals MVP in the same year. Only Willis Reed and Michael Jordan have done that. So Shaq was one of the great all-time players, and he's certainly one of the most dominant forces in NBA history. Here are some pictures of Shaq throughout his career. How would you like to be in front of that there on the upper left? Or under that on the upper right, when he dunks on your head. There he is for the Heat in the middle there, holding a couple of, championship trophy and an MVP trophy for the Lakers there in the bottom right. And there he is with a very young LeBron James when he played for the Cavaliers on the bottom left. So Shaquille O'Neal had a star-studded career, no doubt about that. Jason Kidd is one of the great point guards really in NBA history. I mean, was a star at the University of Cal, was the number 2 overall pick in the 1994 draft by the Dallas Mavericks. He played for basically 20 years for the Mavericks, the Suns, the Nets, and the Knicks. But he was a star, especially for the Mavericks, the Suns, and the Nets. The Knicks was right at the end of his career, but started out playing for the Mavericks, played for a couple of seasons for them, then went to the Suns, had a half a decade with them of greatness, had half a decade plus of greatness with the Nets, and then he went back to the Mavericks and helped them win a championship in 2011, which was a pretty cool story. He was a 10-time All-Star, 5-time first teamer, 1-time second teamer, so 6 All-NBA teams, and he was a defensive stud. He was a 4-time All-Defensive first team and 5-time All-Defensive second team, so 9 All-Defensive teams in his career. He was the co-rookie of the year in 1995. 5 times he led the league in assists and was part of 2 gold medal teams in the Olympics, in the 2000 Olympics and the 2008 Olympics. He was just tremendous. He led the Nets to back-to-back NBA Finals in 2002 and 2003. Now they lost both times, but he was kind of the guy that made those teams go. You can see his career stats there: over 17,000 career points, over 12,000 assists, over 8,700 rebounds. Like at 6'4" and 210, he was strong, he was sturdy, and he'd muscle his way under the hoop and get rebounds and then lead the fast break. He retired ranked 3rd all time in the NBA for regular season triple doubles, and he got into coaching after his career was over and was hired as the head coach of the Nets. So, but Jason Kidd was awesome. He was great to play. Great to watch play. He ran an offense masterfully, and he was an all-around player. Allen Iverson is one of the most entertaining players in history. Never met a shot he didn't like. Iverson played for the 76ers, the Nuggets, the Pistons, and the Grizzlies. He was a star at Georgetown for a couple of seasons, became the first overall pick in the draft in 1996. He not a big guy, 6 feet tall, 165 pounds. He probably put on a few pounds during his career, but he was just this kind of thin, skinny guy. Uh, and you're thinking he's not going to last. He's not going to be durable. He's not going to be able to hold up to the long season and the just the banging around of the NBA. And not only did he prove all his critics wrong, he became one of the great players in history. Uh, he was the MVP of the whole league in 2001. He was 11-time All-Star, three-time first teamer, three-time second teamer, and one-time third team All NBA. So he was a 7-time All NBA player. He was the Rookie of the Year in '97. And like I said, though, he never met a shot he didn't like. If Allen Iverson had the ball in his hands, he was going to shoot it. He led the league 4 times in scoring, and he led the league 3 times in steals. He was man, he was smart and he was quick as lightning. And you'd watch him, and he'd dribble the ball through defenders and go through the lane. And at 6 feet tall, uh, he'd get in there among the trees and score. It was amazing. So he could score from the inside, he could score from outside. He just man, he was fun to watch. Over 24,000 career points, 26.7 points per game. He was just fantastic. He um, has his number 3 jersey retired by the 76ers. And yeah, and he was also notorious for not really liking practice very much. In fact, when somebody got on his case about showing up late for practice or not practicing hard, he'd just say, "Practice? What are you talking about? Practice? I play for the games, man. This is just practice. I want the games." So he wasn't the model citizen when it came to practice, but boy, did he perform in games. And Kevin Garnett, 20-year career for the Minnesota Timberwolves, Celtics, and Brooklyn Nets. Kevin Garnett went straight from high school to the NBA, and he kind of started that trend again in the mid '90s that a number of guys did. He was the 5th overall pick out of high school in the first round of the 1995 draft by the Timberwolves. A 6'11", 250-pound player. He could play power forward or center. He could shoot inside, outside. In fact, he preferred shooting outside a lot of times. And he was just an all-around player. He could dribble the ball, lead a fast break. He was awesome. Uh, Helped the Celtics win a championship in 2008. He was the league MVP in 2004, a 15-time All-Star. He was a 9-time All NBA selection, 4 first teams, 3 second teams, and 2 third teams. He was the Defensive Player of the Year in 2008 and also a 12-time All Defensive selection, 9 first teams and 3 second teams. Tremendous player. 4 times he led the league in rebounding, 4 straight years there. You can see his career points, over 26,000 career points. His rebounds, over 14,500 of those, and over 5,400 assists. So he averaged 17.8 points a game, 10 rebounds, and 3.7 assists. He could have scored more if he would have chosen to, but he was unselfish in a lot of ways. He was a team player, and he just wanted to win. So it was kind of cool in 2008 to see him win a championship with the Celtics, and he was one of the best players in the league that hadn't won a title by that point. And so to cap that off, and it kind of made his career complete. So that is Kevin Garnett. And Kobe Bryant, 20-year career for the Lakers. Uh, that is a record for most seasons played with just one team. And he also went straight from high school to the NBA. He was out of Philadelphia. He was the 13th overall pick in the '96 draft. He got picked by the Hornets, and he refused to play for them. So they they traded him to the Lakers, and he becomes one of the all-time great players in history. 6'6" shooting guard. He so desperately wanted to be kind of the second coming of Michael Jordan. Now he started his career when Jordan was kind of uh, Jordan won 3 championships, '96, '97, '98. So when Bryant starts his career, Jordan is still king of the NBA, and Bryant modeled his game so much after Michael Jordan, both offensively and defensively. Bryant was an all-around player, and he helped the Lakers win 5 championships, uh, 3 in a row from 2000 to 2002 on those Shaquille O'Neal teams, and then 2009, 2010 as well. He was twice the Finals MVP in those '09 and '10 teams. He was the league MVP in 2008. He was 18 times an All-Star, 4-time All-Star Game MVP. Uh, in his 20-year career, he had 15 All NBA selections, including 11 first teams, 2 second teams, and 2 third teams. He also had 12 All Defensive selections, 9 first teams, and 3 second teams. Like I said, he could do everything on a basketball court. He was an all around player. He had a flair for the dramatic. He was clutch. And when the game was on the line, he wanted the ball in his hands. You can see over 33,000 career points, 25 points a game. He also averaged over 5 rebounds a game and almost 5 assists a game. Twice he led the league in scoring. He is the Lakers franchise all-time leading scorer, and he won gold medals in back-to-back Olympics, in the 2008 Olympics in China and the 2012 Olympics in London. And so Kobe Bryant, all around, offensively, defensively, will go down as one of the best players to ever play the game. Of course, he tragically passed away earlier this year in 2020, and that was a real sad deal. But he certainly will be in the Hall of Fame, and he will go down as a basketball legend. Speaking of basketball legends, Tim Duncan is one of the greatest all-around players to ever play. Also played for about 20 years. He played at Wake Forest. He was the first overall pick in the '97 draft by the San Antonio Spurs. A power forward or center, whatever he wanted to play, he could play. Kind of went down more of as a power forward, but at 6'11", 250, he was solid. He was a tremendous rebounder, a tremendous scorer down low. He also could find the open man when he needed to, and he was just awesome. He helped the Spurs win 5 NBA championships in 3 different decades. He was 3-time Finals MVP. Twice he was the league MVP, 15-time All-Star. He was also a 15-time All-NBA selection, 10 first teams, 3 second teams, and 2 third teams. He was a 15-time All-NBA defensive selection, 8 first teams and 7 second teams. So that's pretty amazing if you look at his career. 15 All-NBA selections, 15 defensive selections. He was the Rookie of the Year in '98. He was just awesome. Over 26,000 points a game, or excuse me, points for his career, 19 points a game. Over 15,000 rebounds, almost 11 per game, and over 4,000 assists at 3 a game. So he probably could have scored more if he would have chosen to as well, but he was the ultimate team player, and he made the plays when he needed to, and 5 NBA championships later and a future Hall of Famer. His career is as great as just about anybody could have hoped for. And finally, for this presentation, Dirk Nowitzki. What a great shooter he was, and Dirk was fun to watch. When he was at the top of his game, he was as a great a shooter as there was in the NBA. Played for 20 years for the Dallas Mavericks. He was from Germany, played professionally in Germany for a handful of seasons before he came to the NBA. He was the 9th overall pick in 1998. They say he played power forward, which really he did, but he was 7 feet tall. And he preferred to shoot from the outside. A tremendous outside shooter. Helped the Mavericks win a title in 2011, and he was the Finals MVP that year. He was during that season. I still contend that he was the best player in the world during that time. During much of that season, and then especially during the playoffs and the finals, he just was on fire. He was the league MVP in 2007, a 13-time All-Star. He was a 12-time All-NBA selection, 4 first teams, 5 second teams, and 3 third teams. You can see his career stats: over 31,000 points, over 20 points a game. He averaged also 7.5 rebounds a game and 2.4 assists per game. But really, shooting and just clutch shooting was his MO. He was the first European to start an NBA All-Star game and the first European to win the NBA MVP award. He was awesome. So go back and watch highlights of all these guys we've talked about. And of course, some of you remember watching some of these guys play for a little bit, but go back and watch highlights and you'll appreciate how great these guys were.